I'm making this video to show how I dealt with my sump discharge this year. This was the third wettest April on record in Wisconsin, so it's been very rainy. Previously, my sump was insufficient for the need of keeping my basement dry. So last year I paid a company to come in and basically excavate all around the inside of my basement, lay in perforated hose, lead it to a giant sump pit, which is now keeping my basement dry, but since flooded the street. I do not have ditches here or anything for rainwater, so it was quite the debacle. So last September, plan A was to dig a dry well right in this area, which is where the discharge is, about 3 feet deep, 4 feet deep, fill it back with rock, and then that would give the water a place to go while it percolated into the ground. The discharge for the sump is currently kind of over here hidden, blends in with all the rocks. So I did that. That lasted through September, through the end of the year, and then come these rainy months that had overwhelmed, and I was flooding into the street and all the way down the street and then into the river all the way at the end of the street. So that was plan A. Plan B was to cut basically a large section out here and dig that down 8 to 10 inches and then backfill all that with rock to give the water a place to sit and fuse into the ground. That didn't help. It quickly filled that up. The ground was saturated and then it spilled over. So then plan C was to grade all of this so that the water would kind of gently slope down everywhere instead of just finding one channel to give me more surface area to take it down into the ground. That also didn't work. So that brought me to plan D. Plan D was to dig up basically all of the pipe that led from the house out to the street, replace it with 4-inch perforated pipe. It originally had this 1 1/4 inch schedule 40 pipe. So this has all been replaced with perforated pipe that was backfilled with gravel, landscape fabric put on top of that, and then covered back up with dirt. You might be able to tell it's actually a little damp. There's quite a bit of water. So that's all been done, and unfortunately that also wasn't enough. As part of that plan D, I also installed this one overflow over here, and my plan was, well, if I'm still flooding the street, I'll flood my yard instead. This one's pretty close to the house, so that overflow and the 4-inch perforated pipe come out of here. This is temporary. This is actually a dog food bin. But if you look down in there, the water comes in the side that's towards the bottom of your screen. Straight ahead would be the side that goes towards the street, and to the left is my overflow. And I actually have a cap on here to try to direct more to the overflow. The main purpose of this area, though, is because if you look down at the bottom, you might be able to see there's a bunch of sand. The discharge has a lot of sand in it, and I didn't want to plug up and muck up my new pipe that I just put in. So the hope is that I can just drop a suction pump down here and clean this out every once in a while. But this wasn't good enough. Even with that overflow, I had the issue of basically flooding everything. And this was all super flooded too. So plan E was to install a T down here and then another overflow over here. So that one's further away from the house, so hopefully it won't feed back to the basement. So to get back to the cause of all this water, the water table rises up pretty quick around here. The river's right at the end of my street. So it hasn't rained in like a week. This is just the water table's up so high. So now I've got 2 overflows. I've got perforated tubing. And you can see there's no overflow out here. Well, the only reason there's no overflow out there is because I installed a ball valve so I can shut off the flow to this area out here. Right now it's actually open just a crack, and that way I can decide, well, I can sacrifice my yard and make my yard into a swamp to avoid draining into the street. And you can see there's a little bit of water out here anyway. I've kind of just been cracking it more and more to figure out where I can go to it. So it's been a big pain in the butt trying to avoid flooding the street, but I think I've finally managed to figure this out. The biggest expense out of all of this was all this gravel right here. We got 1.5 yards of gravel delivered, plus I put down another 1/4 yard just out of bags. So that was the biggest pain in the butt out of all of this, was just all the gravel that I had to move. So as long as I'm not flooding the street, the second biggest issue, except for beyond the gravel, is the fact that I have a pretty flat lot. So when I dug all of this out all the way to the house, when it filled up with water, because I had nowhere to go because I had it sealed off, it was flat. The water was even with the ground, telling me that basically from here to there is a flat area, so there's no incentive to drain. The water is supposed to come out at grade, so the tubing isn't buried as deep as I would like, and I've had issues with the past of getting heavy rains in January, February, and then my sump line is frozen, and then it has nowhere to go, and then I have to do a makeshift thing. So I'm going to have to figure out a way around that right now, because even though it's buried deeper than the original Schedule 40 that was there, it's still quite a bit of tubing. I did retain the Schedule 40 tubing that went underneath this slab here. I thought it might be best to not drain and, make this area into a bog, just because it is underneath a concrete slab. So over here there's a connector, and then over there it just comes out as Schedule 40. So basically just this 25-foot run here of the perforated tubing.